So we ended up heading out around 6 in the morning, right when the sun isn't completely out. Right off the bat, found some nice yellow jacks just to put on the stringer. And I wasn't right by my buddy when he got this one, but you can see that's a beautiful first hog for the day. Clean shot, no meat waste. There are these lesser amberjacks swimming around, MAKO jacks. Those two are a little harder to tell apart, but got one from the school. Ended up being a nice one, and wasn't the largest one in the school, but not always is getting the largest the best. These ones oftentimes do have worms in them, so maybe getting a middle-sized one is nice if you want to eat more sashimi. Right here you see that hog that I was pointing at. It was right at the tip of the spear. I got a shot out on it, and on the way up it actually bit my chest. I was so stoked because this was going to be my first hog of the season. I get him to the top. My hands were a little occupied. I didn't want to let him go because I was afraid he'd come off, so I had my friend come with his knife and we try and deal with the hogfish. Problem is, it's usually when you get comfortable with a fish that the mistakes start happening. I didn't even drop the shaft, but he started kicking, did a strong enough kick, and pulled off the shaft. Here you can see he tries to get under a cave, and I'm ready to try and get one more stab in him, but I didn't have a loaded gun. So I go under this little rock, I go as far back as I can, I grab him by the tail, and I managed to get a good hold. I got him back. This was incredibly stressful, but I was just happy to have him. I properly dispatched him in the brain, bled him, and was just so stoked to have this as my bag within about an hour and a half of diving. Partway through, we see this kayak just floating, and we notice there's a hookah. And we dive down and we see this guy spearfishing with his hookah set up. I don't really like seeing scuba divers spearfishing when it comes to regular stuff. Like lionfish is fine, but when it comes to other fish like this, it's not my favorite. And my friend lined up a nice yellow jack, and here I go. I'm trying to line up a good shot on it. I was trying to get a double shot. Only ended up getting one, but it was still a nice sized one. Now I've been doing this a little bit more often if I know I'm in an area with not that many sharks. I'll go ahead after they've been bled out. And they've been, brained. I'll just gut them and use that as a little extra chum. It could bring in yellow jacks, it could bring in extra MAKO jacks, anything, including sharks sometimes, but we deal with that. This also means that I put back some of the nutrients I take out with the fish back into the environment. It's just a good way to reduce my waste that I'm going to be throwing out with things I can't use. And always looking for my little yellow jacks to go ahead and take. Now this was one of the most painful things to see happen. I messed up this shot. I'm still underwater. My friend messes up his shot. The screaming didn't help. We were just really frustrated. I loaded up. I pull my bands back. Watch. Yep, actually it went a little low, and that was partially due to the rush reload. I didn't manage to reload properly and so forth, but it just shows that, when you're rushing a situation, when you're not taking the calm shot, you reduce your chances of getting that fish a lot more. And I just like getting a couple pan-sized snapper. It's always a nice thing to add to your meal. Whether oven cooked, pan cooked, whatever it is, but just this size snapper where it's one person's portion. And of course it was about to be taco night, so I just had to get a nice little Spanish mackerel, line it up, not much meat waste, and I ended up actually giving this away to my neighbor and one of my best friends so they could enjoy. As a redemption shot, I got a stone on this next jack, MAKO jack, but there was a lot of them, so we threw my flasher down.
Grab my flasher, they come right to it.
Just another pan-sized snapper again. By this point, my stringer was pretty full, my friend's stringer was pretty full, so we decided to slowly start heading back in. Now this is one of the best things. My friend shot his first Kubera snapper right here. A beautiful size snapper. And it was crazy how it just turned all white like that. And this is AQUA, or form of it. You just want to practically brain the fish and then go ahead and you can bleed it right after it's completely dead. Just a couple of sharks. We always see a lot of nurse sharks swimming around. This guy had his head stuck in there. He eventually got out, but he was probably enjoying a nice little feast. But we ended up with a nice sized stringer right there. My friend's stringer broke on the beach, so we had to just line up all the fish on my stringer and go with it. So this technique I wanted to talk about is called kombu-jime, and it involves kombu, which is the seaweed, and you would get this wrapped around for dashi. They would use it for making broth, and you, with this misting bottle, you can spray some of that umami, which is a bit of the saltier things, and you just kind of moisten it and take some of the excess off, but you don't want to get rid of all of it. You go ahead and you take a very white meat that's bland tasting like hogfish right here. I did several tries, and I always like to experiment with this because I did this in Japan and it came out wonderful. But coming to Florida, I had different kombu, I had all sorts of different variables that I wasn't accustomed to. So this first set I cut a little bit thinner than it should have, and I correct this later on. This is one of those techniques that I do recommend you practicing with your favorite brand of kombu, working on the different types of fish and how long you cure it, in a sense. What it really is doing is taking like a white meat like the hogfish, and it is imparting and kind of curing, brining the hogfish, so it's slightly dehydrating and at the same time imparting some of the seaweed flavor into the fish meat. And all you want to do is, once you line it up in there, you can line it up with a vegetable or something, but you line it up in there, you wrap it with saran wrap, and then you have something not too heavy, but just something like a plate pressing it. Now the first time I did it for about 12 hours or so, or a bit less, but still that was way too much, especially being cut that thin. And this was a very umami filled seaweed. It was incredibly salty compared to the one I had in Japan, so I miscalculated and I redid it. And I also spoke to my buddy Seiji in Japan, and he explained to me that if instances where you cure it for too long inside of the seaweed, you can soak it for several minutes back in water to reduce the salinity and make it enjoyable. And as you go curing it, take a little piece from one of the corner ones, taste it, and make a judgment call for yourself of if you want to continue curing it or not. This is kind of similar to what I'm about to be doing, which is dry aging fish. My buddy Daniel and I are going to be trying to do that. And I'm just using this moment to talk to you guys about all these different techniques. Continuously learning and asking all my friends about different styles and techniques around the world. You can see that it's not as white anymore. It's become more of a, not a jelly texture, but it's become more opaque. After you finish using the seaweed for kombu-jime, you can go ahead and use it for making dashi or broth, and then after that use it as a third time for seaweed salad. You can already see this is what I made with it. I made a don, and it tasted wonderful, and I was really happy to eat that.